WrestleTalk.
Move aside, Kurt Angle. I don't care about your WrestleMania tag, Ronda Rousey. We have a new greatest wrestler ever at this stage in the game for how many matches they have under their belt. And I hate it. I hate it. I hate that he's so good. I hate that I pop for it. It's Logan Paul, because Logan Paul and Roman Reigns had an absolute corker of a main event on last night's Crown Jewel show. I'm Ollie Davis. I'm joined by Luke Owen, DAD. Please, if you haven't already, hit the subscribe button. Give us a thumbs up. Leave a comment down below with your thoughts on this episode of Premium Live Event Does Saudi Arabia. And of course, send in your Ultrachats to WrestleTalk.com/support. We'll read out every single one of them over $5. Right. WWE Crown Jewel 2022.
Yes.
Overall, I had a great time.
I think this show was broadly fine. I think is actually a bit of an oversell of it. I think the majority of this show was middle of the card Raw and SmackDown levels.
Perfect.
But that's fine. But nothing felt pay-per-view worthy.
I think the main event did.
Let me finish.
Sorry.
Until this main event. And that's kind of like why I kind of structured the title of this show the way that I did, because they didn't just steal the show. For me, they saved this show. Without this main event, this show would have been a really like mediocre at best. And considering the great run of shows they've had, like with SummerSlam and Extreme Rules and Clash of the Castle, this is not at the level that WWE have been putting out as of late. But this main event was just like that actually did feel befitting of a pay-per-view.
I'm gonna pull you back a bit. Don't just look at the last 3 months of Triple H in charge. Look at, let's say, the last 5 years of WWE. And the Saudi shows in particular. Where does this... what you said was mediocre for the new regime, but for the last 5 years.
But even like for the overall thing, like this is it was not as bad as some of the really awful, like those early doors Saudi shows. Goldberg Taker, Greatest Royal Rumble, the big propaganda machine that it was.
Shawn Michaels
coming back. Like it's not that level. Like that is bottom of the barrel. That's just awfully bad. But actually, at the same time, in an entertaining way.
Shane McMahon's now the best wrestler in the world.
Oh, you don't get that sort of thing on a regular WWE show. So even when it was like real bad, at least you could come out and be like, there's a lot to talk about though, isn't there? Whereas I think for the majority, there's not a lot to talk about here. Like, I think, was it Crown Jewel last year with Brock and Roman? Felt like a way bigger show than this one did.
Yeah, I suppose so, but I guess it's about a recalibration of what these shows are, because I feel like Triple H is a smart guy, and he knows you can't do a takeover every month with the main roster. I mean, if you look back at NXT TakeOver Glory Days, 4 or 5 a year? So he wasn't even doing regular pay-per-views then. You've got Extreme Rules, then you've got Survivor Series with a month gap. Crown Jewel is actually in an awkward space. So I think Triple H is really smartly recalibrating the quality of B shows and A shows and your big four. I think he did exactly the right amount on this. We got, just on paper, we got a title change. Women's, it doesn't matter that it's a useless title. Sorry, Sasha Banks and Naomi. I cannot believe you walked out of the company because of those titles. But, someone's got to care.
There was a title change.
Bray Wyatt, I feel like, did have an elevation, a progression of his story. And what a main event. And the rest of the show was fine. Like you said, to me, you only need 3 things. And it was only 3.5 hours long with no pre-show. I think for a decent show.
But 2 of those are massively at a push, because you're right. There was a title change, but you yourself admitted it's a title change that means absolutely nothing, and you don't care about it.
Let it be written on the record. Luke Owen hates women.
And a Bray Wyatt promo that we got on SmackDown 2 weeks ago.
But I think
So,
it's
like,
the Bliss edition. It's the Bliss edition that
I think
makes Bray
the
Wyatt
Bliss
different.
edition is an interesting thing, but also that felt like a TV angle at the same time.
But it wasn't.
But it wasn't. It was on pay-per-view. But the rest of this was just like I was watching this show and I was like, oh, that match was fine. That match was fine. That match was fine. That match was fine. The 6-person tag, the OC and Judgment Day, actually for me was the best thing on the show. And I thought that was the first time I was like, oh, right, yeah, this is a pay-per-view. Right, yeah. Also, it's supposed to be a WrestleMania level pay-per-view as well. This isn't a B show. These are the A shows.
Who's saying that?
The WWE financials are saying that.
Yeah, well...
And the way that they present it, look at the massive stage that they've got, the huge presentation, all the fireworks, the pyro, the ballyhoo. They present this like it's a WrestleMania level show. This wasn't presented the same way Extreme Rules was, which was Raw and SmackDown, but now there's gimmicks and stuff. This was the big show.
I don't think it was. I think
that's a mad take.
I think behind the scenes, if you look at the financials, you can clearly see the business relationship is very, very lucrative for WWE. But I don't feel in the run up to this show that it was presented like how big Saudi Arabia shows have done in the past.
You're right. Brock Lesnar versus Bobby Lashley is something they would just do on Raw and SmackDown, or just on any B-level pay-per-view.
So it did feel like a pay-per-view then.
No, but the match itself was then just broadly fine.
I feel like, Clash at the Castle was promoted way heavier than this.
Oh, I could not disagree.
Built up more.
No, I could not disagree more. Could not listen. These Saudi shows are supposed to be big, massive shows. And they did present it like it was a big, massive show.
But it's a big, massive show and we've been saying it all week, in a sort of one-shot, out of continuity...
But these aren't. But they're no longer those out of continuity shows. These are now just like Elimination Chamber is a Saudi show now.
Yeah.
Like they are now. They once were propaganda out of continuity shows that were done for My Sweet 16, Crown Prince, but now they are just in the timeline.
Yeah. Well, I think you've got your. I feel like it's still a show that is largely exhibition matches. Brock Lesnar, Bobby Lashley.
Which was done because they're going to do a rematch, presumably at WrestleMania.
Omos, Braun Strowman, and Logan Paul versus Roman Reigns. Those, to me, were exhibition matches. And crazily, I think Lesnar Lashley was the worst of those.
Oh, that's mad. Because although Lashley and Lesnar was not great, and it was actively quite boring, Omos and Braun Strowman, Michael Cole even said, this is a slow plodding match.
Well, that... It had a great start before they wrestled, and it had a great finish. And sometimes that's all you remember. Okay, well, we're just on different sides of this. I think it was a decent watch with 2 moments that progress things and an excellent main event.
The main event, undeniably, was superb. Incredible main event.
And as much as we're all talking about Logan Paul, and that is the big headline at the moment, he's amazing. It's takes 2 to tango, obviously. Hot take, Roman Reigns is very, very good too.
He's excellent.
But this, for what they had to do, this could not have gone more perfect.
No.
Logan Paul has, it's his 3rd match. And he's, the tag match at Mania, a singles match at SummerSlam, and then boom, your main event in a pay-per-view against Roman Reigns.
I'm going to quiz you now. Who was the tag match against?
Oh, it was Miz. And he was tagging with the Miz.
Yeah, who did he face? Because I've only just remembered now, and I could not think of who it was while you were talking about it.
Was it Rey Mysterio and Dominic?
It was the Mysterions, yeah.
Oh, I got Survival Series. That was really... But that level of progression, he's had 3 matches, and granted, he's probably been training loads with Shawn Michaels.
Shane Helms is the guy that's been going through his matches.
But just from an exit, so just the moves, he executes the moves perfectly and with flair. I think he carries himself with a natural charisma, and just you would expect those 2, right? Because he's an athlete and he's a YouTuber. So you've got charisma, you can do athletic moves. But then there is this 3rd intangible part, which is where a lot of people often fall down. I would say, you look at the history of celebrity matches. Bad Bunny was very good at hitting...
He hit a Canadian Destroyer.
He hit spots, high spots, and he had charisma. Stephen Amell, with Christopher Daniels' help, did some athletic spots, and he had an element of charisma. Snooki, WrestleMania.
She did a handspring back elbow.
Crowd goes wild. Those are what celebrity matches are supposed to be. But somehow, in the last 2 years, with Pat McAfee and now Logan Paul, they, at the same time, it's like Rock and Austin coming along at the same time.
Let it be known, on the record, Ollie Davis said that Pat McAfee and Logan Paul are the Rock and Steve Austin of this generation.
Keep the checks coming, Trips. He pays more than Tony now. Logan Paul and Pat McAfee have that third component, which is just an insight into how wrestling psychology works. That's what it is. It's the wrestling psychology. It's the timing. It's the facial reactions. It's the delay in hitting your next move. I am so impressed with Logan Paul. And Pat McAfee won the Wrestling Observer News that as Rookie of the Year last year. Logan Paul's got to win it this year.
I think 100% he's probably going to win it, yeah.
What is happening?
It is insane because, yeah, you're right. He's taken to this very naturally. And he hit all of his spots and never looked unsure of his footing. That's the key to this, is that if you watch, some celebrity matches, you can see them in their head being like, okay, what's my next thing I need to do? Okay, what's my next thing to do? I don't think he's as good as Johnny Knoxville, who is the best celebrity wrestler of this year. And I think he had actually those three, and also the fourth one, he had a giant hand. But Logan Paul does all of his spots completely flawlessly. The buckshot lariat, I think, is the one that everyone is jumping to. Because you said it while we were watching, because you watched this match a second time, watched it while I was watching it today. You're like, that is better than Hangman Page's buckshot. But I would say...
In general.
But I would say, I think you are comparing that to, if you're only thinking of Hangman's bad ones, then yeah. But Hangman, on a consistent basis, has done, I think, better buckshots than that. It is better than CM Punk's, though.
Yes.
He did not fall on his keister.
Okay, so Logan
or break
Paul,
his leg.
Logan Paul currently has 100% success rate.
But yeah, exactly. If you only do 3 matches and you don't miss any moves, that's 100% success rate.
He has hit a perfect buckshot lariat. There's nothing out there to tell me he cannot hit that perfect buckshot lariat every time.
It was crisp.
Hangman Page is probably a 78% at best.
That is madness. You are coming in here with your most insane takes.
Just take AEW. Any chance to dig. But everything else, the airtime he got on springboards and leaps and crossbodies, he hit the frog splash while vlogging. Is that what they call it these days? Live stream.
I guess that's what he was doing. Michael Cole just kept shouting that he was taking selfies, but I think he was doing a live stream video thing. But Michael Cole's like, he's taking damn selfies while he's doing it.
And just, everything really. I mean, just it was the small stuff really that impressed me most. It was when he would land off a back body drop on his feet and perfectly. It wasn't the clunky.
He did basic things.
Very, very well.
I know. I'm not knocking him at all. I've got 2 quibbles, I would say, with this match.
Quibbles?
The build to this was very bad, and that was all on Logan Paul, because he's not very good on the mic, and he's very bad at telling stories in promos, and he is unnaturally presented as the babyface when he is a very natural heel. Because he feels like a douchebag, and he looks like a douchebag.
I do agree with you. I was cheering for him in this match.
His brother looks like an even bigger douchebag, but they put them on TV as the babyfaces, and he feels uncomfortable in that skin because he's so stilted in his promos and stuff. In the ring, it's not too bad, but I kind of wish they'd just let him be a heel because too much. When he was doing all the stuff with The Miz in their tag match, incredible, so good. My other quibble is that the build to this has all been around that one lucky punch. Is that all Logan Paul needs is that one lucky punch. And if he nails that, then he might actually beat Roman Reigns. But they did that spot in the middle of the match. And then they did the outside table spot, and then he did the frog splash. And it's the frog splash is way less impactful because the story you've been building is the one lucky punch. If you'd have switched those round and then done the one, that's his big major near fall. So I think it just sort of like threw the balance of the match off ever so slightly. And then you just do all the schmoz stuff, so that's all fine after that.
Yeah, I could see that. Save that that punch for the very last near fall.
That should be your big final near fall. Because that's the story you were telling.
But then there's the brawl on the outside. That's when Logan Paul does the flip dive to take them all out. He comes back in. Superman punch spear. Yeah, because Logan Paul hits this incredible frog splash outside, slaps onto Roman's chest. Like Tempest couldn't get over. He was parallel to the floor. Like he just came down at the perfect angle. This brought the Usos out. They brawled with Logan Paul's entourage. Jake Paul came out rather, heavy-handedly with his own entrance music, and he wasn't just out there normally. So,
it's a good.
He's having a tag match.
I will credit WWE for several things in this. The presentation of which, the match, and certainly. But because they don't have Titantrons anymore, they just have your name in massive letters.
I hate it in word art.
You're right, but at least it let me know who it was, because I don't know who Jake Paul is.
He was set up earlier in the show. He got out a limo.
Oh, I did a lot of skipping forward. In between matches, I did a lot of skipping forward because they got the 4 minutes worth of commercials. So I just a lot of skipping forward.
Yeah.
So I did miss that. I know of his name, and that's the key to this. I know his name. So when he comes up on the screen, it just says in ginormous letters Jake Paul. I'm like, well, now I know who that is. And so that I think is actually WWE does a big brain thinking on how to present their wrestlers.
Oh, yeah.
You don't give them cool gimmicks or anything like that. You just put their names in massive letters, and people know who they are.
I hate that form. I used to love it when it would take ages. Taz's entrance just used to be about, or Bray Wyatt's now actually.
Yeah,
it's
carrying
about
crosses.
A minute of doop, 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 and there'll be a video clip. Blink and you'll miss it of someone getting choked out, someone getting suplexed. But yeah, it looks like afterwards Roman Reigns, he retained, but he was just brilliantly selling not just the injury, the sort of punch to his face, just working his jaw, felt like he couldn't hear out of one ear. He was also selling the trauma of nearly having lost his belt.
Take notes, Miz.
Yeah.
So I didn't do the Raw review, but they did a segment on last week's Raw or the week before that where Roman Reigns hit the Superman punch on the Miz.
I think it was this week's Raw.
Was it this week's Raw? And later on, then Miz just comes out and just does his entrance normally, and then just walks down the ring, and then just goes, and just sort of holds his jaw. And he'd be like, oh, but he's the Miz. He's trying to pretend that it didn't bother him. And I was like, yeah, but by doing that, it sort of undermines all the stuff. Roman here made Logan Paul's one lucky punch feel like it was the most devastating thing in the world. And his performance at the end of this was so incredible. He's just walking up the ramp, holding his jaw, and he's just like, man, I actually was quite lucky there. And then the bravado kicks in, and he's like, back to YouTube with you. I don't want to see you in this ring ever again. And he turns around, and Paul Heyman is screaming at him, we all acknowledge you, my tribal chief. We all acknowledge you. And he's staring at these title belts. And then he turns around and he's like, I am the best. I am the GOAT. I am the number one. It is a superb performance because you accomplished everything in those few moments.
You would say, I'd almost call him Golden Samoa Joe. It's that sort of...
It was so great.
But yeah, I think we're definitely building to some form of Logan and Jake Paul tag team, the way Jake Paul came out with the title.
That's not
against the Usos.
Yeah, no, but
naturally.
I mean, for me, I want Sammy and Kevin against the Usos.
Oh yeah, that can also happen.
But my point I was going to make is that for me feels like that's the Mania match. Is Sammy and Kevin Owens versus the Usos for the tag titles, with Logan Paul now out injured. Their reports could be, according to Logan Paul himself, torn ACL, torn MCL, torn meniscus. He could be out past WrestleMania.
That is rough.
And so then that's when you do the match. I don't know. But to kind of sort of wrap things up here, for me, the most important thing about this is not just that Logan Paul had a great performance in all of this, and Roman Reigns was superb. This genuinely did save the show for me. Because otherwise I would have walked out of this being like, yeah, that is a 2.5 star, 3 star at best show. And I think that is way below the standard that WWE have set themselves as of late. But this then pushes them into the 4-star rating. And I think that it really was that good that it carried an entire near 4-hour show on its shoulders.
Don't you think, though, that's what main events are for? So many, most shows should have a main event that's so good that it does make you feel that way.
Yes,
So
but that doesn't mean you can just do mediocrity on the undercard.
I think it does.
I think that's a very old school mentality of just like don't outshine the main event.
Yeah.
But this is also, it's a very different era of wrestling now. And I think that a lot of the wrestling we got in this was like at best Raw standards, Raw SmackDown, like just regular TV matches. Like the Brawling Brutes and Usos was a regular TV match. The women's tag match was a regular TV match. And I think that standards have been set so much higher now that when you get to a pay-per-view, you are doing better than you would do on TV.
I just think like it's different wrestling philosophy now for me, because I've lived through the period where I thought that I wanted every match to bang on a pay-per-view, and actually it's a bit exhausting, especially when they're 4 or 5 hours long. So I think actually structuring the card, telling AJ, hey, just go out there and do your usual TV main event, and then at the next pay-per-view you get to do your 5-star stuff. I'm
not saying that every match has to be a 5-star classic. But at least, be better than you would be if you were just doing a 5-minute match on TV.
Omos and Braun Strowman, I don't know what you're watching. Let's get into your thoughts on the show. WrestleTalk.com/support. Send them in. We'll read out every single one over $5. Misha Sumra says, observation. Less about the show itself, more about the time zone. Definitely a more UK-friendly schedule than usual. Sammy for Syria charity watch party next time out, of course. Just a thought. Stay safe, lads. Love the content. SWAF Nation 444. Ever. Your Gabbage Mate says, a good way to reunite Alexa and Bray could be Bray using Easter eggs as a siren's call to her, ultimately leading her to her fighting to keep the version of herself she just got back, maybe even throw in a, no please, I just want to be Alexa moment. Thoughts?
Yeah, I mean, maybe we'll talk about this when we get to it, but I don't want Alexa and Bray together.
At the same time, I don't think what Bliss is doing right now is good enough for her to want to hold on to either.
Well, yeah, because what she's doing at the moment is nothing. She's just being Bianca Belair's friend. But yeah, like when the little logo came up during Alexa Bliss's promo, I did have a, oh no. Like that's not good.
Frankenfoot says, a YouTuber that is very controversial came in and hung with the top double champ after only having 2 matches. It's egregious. It makes WWE look bad. And Roman lame for getting totally dominated for stretches. The location is very unacceptable. Blind marks. It's
wrestling.
It's wrestling. This is a tale as old as WrestleMania 1.
Yeah.
So in WWE, it doesn't jar with me as much as it would, because I feel like WWE's got its own internal rules where celebrities can do this.
Yeah, it's pro wrestling. And if you present someone as a top star, then they are going to feel like a top star that can hang with your top champion. I've got no beef whatsoever with Logan Paul having a good showing against Roman Reigns, because that was the whole point of this match.
Jarvis V. This was a great show. One of the best of the year. All but the trios match.
Whoa! Hold the phone now.
And Omos versus Braun. Whoa! Hold the phone again now. Were great or amazing. I think Triple H is in a good stride on premium live events. Each one gets better. Well, I enjoyed this show, but this is definitely the weakest of the Triple H era. The main event was match of the night. Logan was surprisingly great. Compa Doom, shocking. Another Roman match that has interference for Roman to win. While the Bloodline story is neat, the matches all end the same way. Boring.
I like it.
Yeah, same. I think it's working. Although I do have an issue with all of the matches in WWE ending via some form of schmoz distraction.
Yeah.
Charles Berg. Yeah. Fun match. I hate that Logan Paul is actually really good at this. Thankfully, Jake Paul threw some terrible working punches, so we can make fun of that. But yeah, Logan's a star, and I hate it so much.
This is the thing for me with Logan Paul, because I don't really know anything of the lads. I've got nothing to really hate against on him in that sense. I've never seen any of his YouTube videos. I've never seen him do a tweet or an Instagram or a TikTok or whatever. So literally my only exposure to Logan Paul are these three wrestling matches. And my only takeaway is well, he's a good heel because he's got a proper prick face.
Likes Pokemon.
And he carries himself like an absolute knob. But I think he should be a heel rather than a babyface because he's a very bad babyface.
In the matches, he's a very good babyface. But
in
everything else
this
is very
one
bad.
match, he was a good babyface because the Miz match was okay.
I thought he got over in the Miz match. Gabriel Reyes, the match was fun and Reigns is great, but the whole tribal chief has reached arc fatigue for me. I can't connect to any Roman or Usos match until they start to lose belts. Don't want to sound pessimistic, just a 2-year story that is not for me. I feel like it did dip. Like, definitely when Drew lost, I was like, oh, Jesus. But the Sammy stuff, the Usi stuff, it's somehow gotten better than it was before for me.
And that's going to happen with a 2-year run. Like, this started absolutely incredible, and then it just got better and better and better and better. And then after WrestleMania last year, it just took a huge nosedive because, like, I thought the Claudio stuff wasn't great, and then going into the summer wasn't great. The John Cena match wasn't great.
Yeah.
It was just, and then the Balor stuff, and then the Brock stuff was just like tiresome and like, oh my God, we've done this before. And so it just took this really steep nosedive. But since Triple H has taken over, since Clash of the Castle, it's now started its ascent again. And I think all the Sami Zayn stuff is so great. And it's the only stuff on SmackDown outside of Bray that I'm really like tuning in to be like, that's the thing I want to see next. Because I know that I'm going to see a great Brawling Brutes or Imperium match. Like, I knew I was going to get a great Walter Ray match. But the like story stuff is all the Bloodline. Like, I think it's great.
It's Usi.
It is Usi.
We'll just do this last one for now. Jarvis v. So since now Roman won, of course, and that match was great, Logan, as much as he comes off as a terrible person, can do this well, and I hope he gets well soon, but it's over now, and the Paul Bros can stay away from any titles when he comes back, please. Triple H.
You might be out of luck there, Jarvis v.
Definitely going for the tag belts.
And on paper, that is a bigger match than Sammy and Kevin going for the tag belts. Storyline-wise, no. But on a poster, that is a bigger match.
We're going to rattle through these because we have already gone over time. And there was actually quite a lot on this show.
Yeah, because it's a WrestleMania-length show, because it's a WrestleMania-sized pay-per-view.
Open with Brock Lesnar versus Bobby Lashley. At the start, I thought, wow, this is what I wanted their Rumble match to be. It was just like Lashley came out the gate with 4 spears. One of them was through a barricade. Brock Lesnar hit the F5. People are kicking out everywhere. And then Bobby gets on the Hurt Lock and Lesnar can't get out. And he's doing his, I've got such a red face thing. And he kicks off the turnbuckle and lays on Lashley. And Lashley, rather than let go, which he could have easily done, while the referee is counting, stays there with his shoulders on the mat. And that's the pin.
Yeah, it was it was a pretty boring match. I mean, outside of, it's just big. It's basically, if you like spears and German suplexes, then you're gonna have a great time.
I do. It's like I just want Lesnar and Goldberg every couple of months.
Well, that's the problem. I've got fatigue with that now.
Right.
Like, I've got fatigue with that Lesnar style of match. Like, it's exactly the match you expected it to be, but the finish was quite poor.
Yeah, really didn't. I thought it really made Bobby look bad. They're obviously trying to protect him. He also beat up Lesnar afterwards to get a bit more heat and make him look good because he's going to be the guy there every week. Do you think this was a heel turn for Lashley? Or just a bit of
No, it was just him standing tall. It's to set up the future match between the two of them. Likely, probably be at the Rumble. Well, actually, I think they might even try and save it till WrestleMania.
One apiece now.
Yeah, like you put both of them into the Rumble. They both eliminate each other from the Rumble. And then, one-on-one, the rubber match, deciding who is the better of the two.
We got Damage Control coming out. Some weird orders of stuff, by the way, on this show. Bobby Lashley came out, and then they played like a 6-minute video package, and then Lesnar came out. So then we get Damage Control making their entrance, and then I think there was a Liv Morgan promo.
Yes, the Peacock ad breaks.
Yeah, and then they had an interview with Bliss and Asuka, and then they did their entrances, and then they had the match. It was just horrid. But in this backstage interview before Bliss and Asuka came out, Bliss is saying, I think she's saying something along the lines of, we're trying to get away from something, and that, like, not related to Bray. And the screen behind her flickered, and it's the spooky.
It's the logo,
and then it was the logo.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, the two of them do have history, so I guess it makes sense from that front. But I think it's the bad part of the history.
She was the last person.
Yeah.
So I could see Bray wanting to work. If I'm looking at Bray, how he approaches character, he, for bad or good, he is very committed to what has happened.
Yeah,
which I admire.
Oh, you always got to admire it. And
but there's a lot of crap there with the Fiend.
Yeah, but it's tying up some loose ends, perhaps.
Yeah.
And actually, you know what? I think Alexa Bliss could probably do with some loose ends being tied up, because she had some therapy sessions that were both they were hilariously both rushed and stretched out at the same time, because they hadn't filmed enough of them to get them to the next pay-per-view. But they also didn't want to show them every week, so they showed like 2 a week for a bit. And then she just came back and was just normal. Then went off TV for another few months and came back and was just normal.
Yeah.
And just dropped every bit of story that they were doing.
But she's still got Lily, which is now just a creepy doll.
But she doesn't.
It's in the AR entrance.
It's in the AR entrance, but she's not coming out to the ring with Lily. At least she didn't today.
Oh, I really hope if that, because Bray's very creative. Everything he's done so far, fantastic. I'm sure he can find a way to make this good, because it felt like a lot of Bliss's run before was something Vince was tinkering with.
Well, for me, Bliss's run was, you're not over. The Fiend is over. So I could just put that Fiend onto someone else. Daniel Bryan isn't over. Yes is over. I could just give yes to Stephanie in the Big Show, and then they'll just, it's the exact same thing. He didn't want Bray to be the one who was over with this gimmick. He wanted Alexa Bliss to be the one that's over with this gimmick. And that's bad. So with Bray at the helm, and the Bray doing all of this, I'm sure he can do a much better version of that.
And the better version, you would think, wouldn't include a winking doll.
But hey, it might do.
Well, that's it. Yeah, I don't want Lily to be anywhere. I hope the first segment of them together is just Rambling Rabbit death style. Bray hits Lily with a baseball bat.
It sells merch though, doesn't it?
Oh, you can make a new cuddly toy.
Well,
Uncle Howdy.
But why do you need to make a new one when that one right there is just working fine as is?
Hate it. So we didn't get anything else Bliss-wise. Or did we? So Bliss and Asuka come out. They have a standard match. Pretty good, but you would see this on Raw usually.
This would not be the main event of Raw.
The finish, again, seemed just a bit clumsy. Io Shirai seemed out of position for a bit. It felt like people didn't, like they were just waiting for a spot to happen, and the spot turned out to be Bliss is going to hit Twisted Bliss on Dakota Kai. Nikki Cross runs in, DDTs her off the top rope, and Kai gets the win. Yeah,
she does a swinging neck breaker, and then then Kai pins her. Because they didn't show that it was Io Sky, I thought Bayley had run down, because they've both got black hair that's been dyed red. And because they are in Saudi Arabia, they're not wearing their normal gear. They're wearing their little Power Rangers outfits. So she got up in the ring, and I wrote my notes, Bayley's run down to cause a distraction. And then because Bayley wasn't there, I was like, that must have been Io Sky that caused the distraction. But why was Bliss then distracted by that? Because why are you surprised that a wrestler in this match is trying to stop you doing a move?
I thought this was a pretty poorly executed finish. Yeah. But we have new women's champions again. Pretty clear that it was only changed on Monday to do a title change here, I think.
Yeah, that sounds about right. But that is 2 duff finishes on the bounce. I hope the next one's got a better finish.
Nikki Cross, by the way. So in the match, Bliss weirdly had just a flash of light appear on her face.
Oh, did she?
Yeah. So me and Tempest were on edge because of because of the Wyatt 6 logo. And Bliss is just in the ring. She's got a rest hold on someone. And it looked like all the lights at the top of the stage had come on and there was illuminating on her face. And the crowd went, like someone was going to come out. And then nothing happened. And then about 5 minutes later, when Bliss makes her hot tag, she's halfway through a hot tag, and you see the lights that are illuminating the crowd shut down. Like how the Fiend used to do. But without the sound effect. And they went off and they continued to go off. And I think a few people held up Firefly things, and then they just came back up again.
That's cool.
Any time before the last few months, I would have gone, power cut.
Yeah.
Cost of living. I get it. Save the energy.
It's affecting us all.
Especially in the most oil-rich nation in the world. But now I'm looking at that and going, Is that a tying into this Wyatt thing that we just had? I think probably
has to be. I did not notice it though, but that might be because I was dreadfully bored by this match, so I don't think I didn't spot it.
So is Bliss getting recruited by Fiend in this version of things, or is the Fiend Wyatt? Is Wyatt targeting people who have screwed him over?
But it's Uncle Howdy that I think is recruiting these. You know, whether that's going to be Bo or that's going to be Bliss. It's not Bray, because Bray is separate from, even though Uncle Howdy is Bray, they are separate in the same way that the Fiend and Bray Wyatt were separate people.
Yeah.
So it is Bray that's recruiting them, but really it's Uncle Howdy that's forming this group.
But is he recruiting them, or in this instance, is he reminding Bliss? You screwed over my boy last time. I'm coming for you. Maybe Nikki Cross is it's a misdirect. And Nikki Cross is the one who's been recruited. When you think Bliss is going to be, and actually Cross, goes crazy and attacks.
That's actually, I quite like it actually. If Nikki Cross is the misdirect, that's actually really, really smart. Because you are just designed to think automatically it's going to be Bliss. That's really smart. I like that a lot.
Yeah, it's just there's so many possibilities.
Yeah,
it's exciting. I think that's we used to say this about AEW. It was like, it could go so many ways, and I love all of them.
Yeah,
and here it's like that's what we're saying every week about the bloodline. And here too, maybe.
That's what I was saying on the Dynamite review. That's for me is AEW's big problem at the moment. Yeah. It isn't the too many belts, although that is a problem. It's that there's no big hook to the show at the moment.
Yeah, where is that guy? Hook. Haven't seen him for a few weeks.
Yeah, I'll give you that one. He had a match with Bronson Reed or whatever.
Oh yeah, the Arthur Ashe though. That was a month ago.
Yeah.
Over a month ago. Drew McIntyre took on Karrion Kross next in a steel cage with Scarlett Bordeaux at ringside. Two ineffective things here. But first off was the steel cage is there to stop her interfering with Mace. Mace can get through the gaps in the wall. Second is, just because of cultural customs, covering her from head to toe so you can't see any of her arm flesh. I think makes it more sexy when it's a skin-tight leather onesie.
I just think you've really got big step on me mummy vibes coming off you at the moment. Especially when you're like, because, I don't know, man. I don't know what to tell you.
Step off me mummy?
Step on me mummy.
What's step on me mummy?
It's like a Twitter thing of like, people say it to Rhea Ripley a lot because she's like, because she's dominating Dominic Mysterio. Mm-hmm. And so when you're there just talking about this woman in leather, head to toe in leather, and you're just giving big step on me mummy vibes.
It's right there. I'm not into that stuff.
She is a person, thank you very much.
Who is overly sexualized? When the whole point of this, I thought, was to not sexualize.
No, yes.
Anyway, this was a...
I can tell you exactly what this match was, because I could quote you Michael Cole himself. This is the slow, plodding match we've come to expect from these two.
He said plodding?
Yeah.
When's plodding been used to describe?
It's like Jim Ross calling something bowling shoe ugly. Because this was... I think Karrion Kross has got a great entrance. And then the bell rings and he's boring as all get out.
It just doesn't connect. Do you think it would work if he wasn't pushed to such a degree?
Oh, because he's a mid-card. He feels like a mid-card guy.
Yeah. It's like Baron Corbin. Baron Corbin is fantastic in his mid-card slot.
100%. But he also doesn't have the main event presentation, which Karrion Kross has. Because he's got the huge, massive 10-minute long entrance. So he is presented like a main eventer. But like, I've said this a few times with Kross, and I think I've said it on the Extreme Rules show. No, I've never seen it. Every company he's been in has pushed him as this tippity-top guy. Every wrestling promoter sees him as this main event guy. But he never actually shows that. So I don't get it.
It's a shame. It's not like I hate him or anything. No, I almost feel sorry for him in these moments because he seems like a nice bloke as well.
I think we said this in the Extreme Rules show. From what I've heard, he's a terrific bloke.
Yeah.
And I'm thrilled that he's got this opportunity. It's just, I don't think he is showing this main event in-ring presence that the entrance is giving him.
Drew, on the other hand, always great. He hit a Claymore from out of nowhere.
It was great.
There was no 3, 2, 1. It was just like an RKO. It was fantastic.
Yeah.
But mostly, fine match, but it just never sort of clicked. They wrestled fine together, but it never clicked with the audience, I think is the problem. The finish was Drew tried to get out the door. Scarlett sprayed mace in his face. He unfortunately didn't bump forward because you could just but still fall out. He took the most ridiculous rock-style flip bump to the other side, the furthest corner away from the door. And then it was a race. Can Kross get out the door or can Drew get over the top? Drew got over the top.
Yeah, for this big feud that's had fire and mace and whips and stuff, the conclusion to it was a foot race. And that's quite rubbish. And I think it made Karrion Kross and Scarlett like absolute doofuses.
Yeah.
And Karrion Kross in particular, like an absolute doofus coming out of this. And it's just not in keeping with this big presentation. He's got this whole fall and pray thing. And then he's just out the door going like, what? Why didn't win the race? What happened? Like, what is your character?
I agree, but I'm sort of, so past Karrion. I don't mind that. It's Drew. I feel like Drew, the story that's happened, the stuff he's gone through, he shouldn't be trying to get out the top of the cage. He should just be like, all right, I'm going to beat up your boy until you let me out.
It's why the escape the cage rule sucks.
Mm-hmm. We got the O's. So yeah, up until that point, I was like, the matches are kind of fine, but these finishes are rubbish. I think from this moment forward, it got a lot better. The OC versus Judgment Day had just, a really fun, pretty standard 6-man tag. You'd see this on Raw.
But I loved it.
Yeah, same.
Absolutely loved it. Like, it was, standard fare until they start doing the big, it breaks down and everyone gets in and everyone starts hitting their big moves. Because once they did that, like, it was absolutely superb. Michael Cole name drop Bullet Club in this. He even called Luke Gallows Doc.
Wow.
And it was, I wrote in my notes here, this match really exposes the idiocy of the ex-WWE guy arguments. This whole storyline is built around guys from New Japan and a storyline about New Japan Pro Wrestling that also features a guy who made his name in Ring of Honor.
That's a good point.
And TNA. Dominic Mysterio is the only guy in this match that is a WWE guy.
And I don't think it's any mistake that he's the most over.
We were talking about this earlier. I mean, Logan Paul's a better wrestler than Dominic Mysterio, but Dominic Mysterio gets the greatest heat in the world because he's got the world's worst haircut and the world's worst gear. He is a perfect heel. Yeah. The gear is now a purposeful thing. I feel like he's making his gear worse on purpose. Because maybe you're like, oh man, I can't believe the lad keeps wrestling in this. And like, we keep shouting him to shave those sideburns, hippie. He's like, I'm going to grow it longer. I'm going to get this as short as I can up top and as long as I can at the back.
The finish came when AJ was about to hit a phenomenal forearm, but Rhea Ripley hit a kind of reverse electric chair on him onto the apron. That was enough for Finn Balor to properly plant a coup de grace. Jesus.
Oh, so great. I thought the match ruled. When I say the match ruled, the final third ruled. The big build to the hot tag with Carl Anderson and Doc Gallows being like wildly swinging, trying to get the hot tag, and Carl's like really reaching forward. It's like, if you just reached ever so slightly forward, you would get that tag.
I'm reaching as hard as I can.
It really was a lot. Oh, I'm so close yet so far away. No, I just missed him.
I particularly liked this bizarre spot where people took up for electric chairs, but they weren't on like the same team. It was like Dominic Mysterio was up and Carl Anderson was up while AJ was going to hit a superplex on.
Yeah.
And I was like, this is the weirdest non-Tower of Doom spot I've ever seen.
I was sort of where I was like, how does this turn into a crossbody that then makes everyone fall down at the same time? But no, three pairs did moves independently of each other, but it was presented like a Tower of Doom.
But they weren't. They weren't even on the same team. I thought, oh right, we're gonna get like a fun water swimming pool fist fight on people's shoulders, but no, they're just odd.
I was
very odd.
It was as goofy as all the hot tag stuff, and I guess that's probably why I enjoyed it so much.
It wasn't, it was essentially your fun 6-man tag on Raw, but I would argue there was some progression here because we finally got a match between the two sides and the Judgment Day won. because they have the woman advantage in Rhea Ripley. So I think that nicely sets up the next chapter, which is, well, who are the OC going to bring in?
It's the best thing on Raw. By leaps and bounds, it's the best thing on Raw.
Braun Strowman then took on Omos. This, like, when they started to face off against each other, and Braun Strowman looked like a regular-sized human, a regular-issue bloke, and Omos was just towering over him. And they, like, Braun was, like, looking around like he was Hulk Hogan, and Moss was just going raising the arm to do the lockup. I was like, this is actually awesome. And then as soon as they started wrestling, I was like, oh no.
I can read you all of my notes here. This is like a worse version of Lashley versus Lesnar. Man, without MVP at ringside, Omos sure is chatty. Omos' selling is lousy, and Braun's isn't much better. Braun hits the power slam and wins. Only went 7 minutes, but it felt like 20.
Oh, it felt so long. It felt so long.
Omos was so chatty during this match. Yeah. Couldn't stop the man talking because he was on offense for 95% of it.
I must say, though, the ending was undeniably spectacular. Braun Strowman doesn't just pick up Omos. It's not like a whoop, whoop, and a really quick power slam. It was a proper on the shoulder, sort of walk around the ring for a bit and then power slam. I was very, very impressed.
Do you know what it really reminded me of? When I was a teenager and I first got into wrestling during the Attitude Era, you're like, oh, cool, I like wrestling now. Mm-hmm. And then your friend lends you a tape from a show from the 1980s. And you're like, I don't like this wrestling. Because that was just big men not really doing actual wrestling. Just sort of like bumping around each other. Like just two planets, just two big bins just running into each other. And then one of the bins falls over and the other bin falls on top of them. And that's the match. That is what this was.
Oh, you like wrestling, little Lukey? Sit down with me. Let's watch Giant Haystacks versus Big Daddy.
Yeah, exactly.
After that, we got the Usos versus the Brawling Brutes. Very good stuff. But again, it's your standard decent tag match on an episode of SmackDown. But as very good as Ridge Holland is, I feel like, still pretty green. I can see him going through the motion, not through the motions, but from thinking about spot to spot to spot in a way that Logan Paul, for instance, does not do. But when Pete Dunne and the Usos were just all working together, because there was a moment when Dunne sort of faked out a super kick playing off when they'd wrestled before, and then he had the confrontation with Jay, and Jay was getting hot-headed, and Dunne snapped his fingers. I was like, this is very, very good.
Its big problem, though, is that they'd already set up the Usos versus the New Day for the tag titles on.
I still jumped at some of those near falls.
I can't believe that you did. Because, this is one of those matches where, I don't mind predictability in terms of, this team is going to win because they're setting this up. I've got no issue with that whatsoever. But it also meant that I couldn't buy into any of these near falls. And actually, the crowd didn't buy into any of these near falls whatsoever.
I know what a match that's going to be, though.
Oh,
Usos New Day.
Yeah,
it's when I'm not saying it's on the same level as it's in the same league. It's when Okada and Tanahashi it just lined up at the exact same time. No way Gato could have planned it. It was just he was taking advantage of some stats and some history that everything aligned. While Okada's 13th title defense was coming at the exact same time. He would break Tanahashi's record, and Tanahashi had just won, and all the dates lined up. It was
so great.
That's what it feels like for the Usos New Day next week.
And I do love it when a company uses a pay-per-view to build to free TV.
Yeah, you just want all the best matches on pay-per-view.
Yeah, the thing you pay for. Yeah, what an awful idea that is.
You don't make money off of that.
I thought the finish was... This was actually... Is this the first good finish? No, that's not fair because actually Judgment Day and Omos was a good finish. Yeah. And they do a big super ooper duper 3D for the win.
The last match we're going to talk about, because we've already covered Logan versus Roman, is Bayley versus Bianca Belair, which I thought sucked. But and Tempest thought it sucked as well. But I've not really seen that reaction from other people.
Well, people really liked Belair Cut 64.
So it's awful.
Well, I know. Well, I wrote that as well because I didn't watch this live. but I was just, scrolling Twitter in the evening, and I saw people screen crapping the Belair cut.
Screen
64.
crapping?
Yeah, screen grabbing it.
Oh, no, but it sounded like you said screen crapping. which this would be,
yeah,
when it's bad.
Screen crapping this. And I was like, oh, that sounds like a really fun spot then. But actually, in reality, it was super lame. Because those cuts were going at like 2 miles an hour at most. This was not quite Omega with Sammy and the golf cart stuff. Because they were crawling towards. And then when Belair puts her on top and she drives down to the end, and it really was like I'm going a bit fast now, 4 miles an hour, and then I'm going to come to a really slow stop. And then we'll do a table spot.
A table spot that didn't work.
I actually thought all the golf cart stuff was really lame.
Bayley drives that golf cart towards Bianca on the stage, stops, and then Belair goes towards her.
Yeah.
I thought it looked so bad. I thought a lot of the spots looked so bad. The whole idea of Belair getting trapped in the steps, like, I can see you can get out of that. Bianca pushed like one of those kit boxes on wheels against Bayley, and it was like the weakest push. I did not believe in this, and especially when you now introduce a golf cart into a match, which has become like the thumbtacks of the last couple of years, not just in AEW, but the Roman stuff with Kevin Owens as well.
Shane McMahon. He fell onto one during that mismatch.
The greatest match in recent memory. There is an expectation there. That's not my fault that you've created a level of golf cart spots. To then deliver this, I thought was they were not only poorly executed, they were poorly designed. So I thought this match was very bad.
I also so they've done a very bad job with Bayley since Clash of the Castle. SummerSlam through to Clash of the Castle was excellent Bayley presentation and Damage Control presentation as well.
Well, they lost the finals the week before. So maybe up until that.
Maybe up to that point. Then they won
Io Shirai lost her first match.
Yeah, but okay, that's a good point. But Bayley was well protected. God, you're right. It really has been bungled.
They've not been good.
It's not been good. I read in my notes here, I was like, I've retroactively made myself think that the early portion of this was good. But you're right, it's been quite bad from the get-go. But Bayley pinned her at Clash of the Castle to set up this thing. And then this feud should have ended at Extreme Rules. But because they want to do War Games, we've had to artificially extend it out by a month and a bit. And now we're going to get another few weeks of this feud that's really... It is going slower than this golf cart is. And it is as effective as these golf cart spots. So no one ever bought Bayley was winning. And then Belair wasn't selling any of the 9 counts. So it never felt like she was ever in any form of trouble. Even in the bit when she had in the flight case, because Bayley puts her in the flight case at one point, and Belair pops out at 6.
Hey.
Yeah, like a jack in the box. Why didn't you wait until 9? To at least make it feel like Bayley might do this.
Well, the Jack in the Boxes shouldn't come out when you expect it.
Like Elf. I thought this was quite bad. And then the finish was hilariously awful.
In the moment when I was watching it, I actually enjoyed the finish. But looking back, I was like, maybe I was just because I hated the rest of the match so much that this looked half decent. So what happened is after an awful bump where Bayley was put up onto Belair's shoulders for the KOD, she tries to move a set-up chair.
Well, I thought she was going to do it onto the chair.
Yeah.
Like an Adam Cole stupid level bump.
But I think, that was the plan. But then the idea was Bayley would whip that away, so Belair would then put her in the thing. But she didn't whip it away enough, and she just horribly landed on her knee.
On her knee? The thing that she injured.
The one part we don't want to hurt again.
It was the one thing we didn't want to happen.
And then Belair puts Bayley in between the two sides of the ladder, which is on the ground anyway, and then pushes it so it's under the bottom of the ladder is underneath the corner ropes of the ring. The idea being that Bayley can't get out. And I was like, actually, I could see that, how she couldn't get out, for maybe 6 seconds.
Because Bayley could quite easily get out of this predicament. And she'd realised that at second 3. And so then she had to spend the next 7 trying to fake that she couldn't get out of this predicament. It was very hokey, very silly. And it is John Cena duct taping Dave's feet together levels of bad finish for a last man standing match. I did not enjoy a lot of this at all. Although I thought the 450 into the chairs was quite spectacular.
Oh yeah, that was the best spot of the match.
Yeah.
That felt like an actual hardcore last person standing spot.
Yeah.
The rest of it I thought was very, very poor.
Yeah.
And that's the second time. I don't think it's the best idea putting Bayley in 2 hardcore matches since she's come back.
No.
Like, she was never that kind of wrestler.
Yeah, I'm just done with watching Bayley and Belair feud, and I think it was a massive mistake dragging this out. But then again, like, that's the problem with announcing War Games or doing War Games for Survivor Series, is you then had to like artificially extend this feud out so that you can do a War Games match.
I said last night to Tempest, maybe originally the plan was for Bayley to win at Extreme Rules and for Damage Control to get all these wins, but WWE are like, ooh, but Sasha Banks and Naomi might come back. And whatever's going on with that scenario is now what they're holding out for the match, for the actual match with Belair when she drops the title to Banks.
Maybe. Yeah.
And that's what's happened to Bayley. Because I just don't understand how Triple H would bring up his girls, Shirai and Kai and Bayley, and treat them this badly. He's smarter than that.
He is smarter than that. Also, I think when Banks and Naomi do come back, and I think they will be back very soon, they were in the bumper for this only then now together forever thing. According to Fightful Select, one WWE source said that was an accident. I don't buy that for a second. I think it was very much done on purpose.
We don't know what these QR codes are.
No idea. But I think they'll just go into a feud with Damage Control as a tag team. And so it's Banks and Naomi going after the belts. You know, come back with their versions of the belts, and then need to do a champion versus champion thing.
Overall...
Well, we haven't done the Bray Wyatt promo.
Oh, blimey. Yeah. So Bray Wyatt came out. Great entrance as usual. He talked about how he doesn't love himself. He sort of indirectly referenced the Rotunda family. He's bringing up a lot of family stuff, which I took as playing into the idea that he will create a faction.
Yes, I think so as well. And there was this sort of like double meaning talk that he was, sort of about how like I started to wear a mask and that mask pushed away people that I loved. It's sort of like both talking about him from a personal standpoint, but also kind of references the Fiend and him actually metaphorically and physically putting on a mask. So I thought actually a lot of that was very cool. And I love the line that I really like was, "No one loves me. They love the idea of me."
That was potentially improvised because the crowd started chanting, "We love you, we love you."
Yeah.
And that's when he said that line.
No one loves me. They love the idea of me. And it's amazing because we used to have chats like that when Bray left, and it was like, where's Bray going to go? A lot of people being like, I'm kind of done with Bray because Bray's always creatively brilliant, but then the bell rings and I don't like his matches. And that is, they love me, but they don't like the idea of me. People loved the idea of the Fiend. But once the bell rung, those matches did stink. I thought it was a brilliant little line. And then Uncle Howdy appears on the screen. It's, if people really knew the truth about you, they wouldn't love you.
The idea that as soon as you let things slip, you won't be able to come back either.
Yeah.
In the past, I've thought, that does sound like Bo Dallas. But this one sounded like Bray.
This was 100% Bray. It was very cool, very spooky.
Overall, I gave the Crown Jewel pay-per-view, I think 73%, which is roughly a 3.5 out of 5.
Yeah. I think it was a totally fine show with an awesome, awesome main event. That, for me, really did save this show.
Let's get into your remaining chats. Jarvis V says, so since now Roman won, we've done that one.
That one we've done.
Jemison Jr. 1. Could you see Sammy staying in the Bloodline Mania? They have revived Roman and Triple H seems to love him as the top guy. The key to the Bloodline is Roman's success, obviously, so they must protect him at all costs. I don't recall a Roman Sheamus feud. Next feud?
Well, my news episode will be going out shortly after this live stream. And in that was my prediction for what War Games is going to be. It's going to be the Bloodline, because they said 10 wrestlers. So that's the full Bloodline lineup versus Brawling Brutes and New Day. And that's your team of 5. And if it's not New Day, then like Owens and Drew.
Yeah.
But because they've got so much New Day stuff going on with the Usos currently, it just sort of makes even more sense then to be Brawling Brutes and them, and that builds to Sheamus and Roman for the Rumble.
I think Sammy I think you pull the trigger on Sammy splitting at Mania. No, sorry, at Royal Rumble, because there's going to be a moment when the Usos and Sammy are in the ring, and they're going to have to turn. Like Jay might turn on Sammy because Roman won't be in that Rumble. And
I think we were talking about this on Content Club on Friday. Elimination Chamber's in Montreal. And so that's the time you want to be doing a Sami Zayn split from the bloodline. My big pitch I made is that Sammy accidentally wins a number one contendership match. So it's Roman versus Sammy, and the whole time Sammy is doing the look, I'm not going to try and pin you. I'm going to just lay down in the ring for you. But all throughout the match, just looking at the belts, taking a belt off of Paul Heyman to hand to Roman Reigns, something things like along those lines of maybe. And then he goes for that sneaky pin at the start of the match, and Roman's face like, what's all that about? Sorry. And that's you do the babyface turn then.
It's so weird because that's more of a big henchman narrative, isn't it? But Sammy is not the henchman. He is this neurotic guy. It's magnificent. Tyler Robinson, Memberg for 14 months. I hate how good Logan Paul is. My grandmother loves him because he was on The Masked Singer.
Was he really?
I didn't know that. Just Donny, Memberg for 14 months. Yeehaw.
Yeehaw.
Gabriel Reyes. You don't have to read this out loud because I know Tempest prefers privacy. This is just to make you laugh. Ollie, almost saying Tempest's real name. You're exposing the business. As tragic as referring to Undertaker as Mark Calloway. Poor kayfabe.
I didn't hear you.
I never said the full thing.
I mean, I didn't even hear you say any other name but Tempest.
Yeah, exactly. And finally, for now, Eternal Blue, who's been a Memberg for 17 months in a row. I'm finally able to catch one of these live after my work schedule shifted. Hate these shows because the Saudi Arabia stuff, and he hopes that Triple H ends the contract with them.
He won't. There's
too much money. It's not in his control.
No, it's $50 million a show. Mm-hmm. They don't do any pay-per-views that are close to this level of money earners. And as a publicly traded company, they walked. And also, they're putting out the ones, but we're the forefront of change. And in some credit to them, women on this show didn't feel like a novelty. No. They were just there and just part of the show. And you go back to Greatest Royal Rumble and the original Crown Jewel, that seems like a distant memory of that'll never happen. So steps were made forward, at least in terms of wrestling.
Yeah. Sami Zayn wasn't on the show.
Well, no, neither was MVP because he's an atheist.
Yeah, well, still icky. But, there's a mixture of sort of moral fatigue where it's just white noise now. Plus, the shows are actually better. So it does make it a bit easier to stomach. But anyway, that's all we've got time for today. Thank you so much for joining us. Please subscribe. Go over to WrestleTalk and watch my edited review, Tempest's immediate live reactions, and Luke will have a news video on whether Sasha Banks is coming back to WWE.
Spoilers, probably is, yeah.
But for now, I've been Ollie Davis. That's Luke Owen. Jam that D-A-D. Jam that jam.
Jam that jam, everyone. Have a good day.